Well, it's nice to be here in person. Thank you, David, for that introduction. I think I'm here because I was part of the process that Scott just described, which I see as a there was a lot of good energy put into that process. There was a lot of hope. I went down to Portland twice, once with a Vancouver Coastal Health staff, and we were all excited about doing this. And it was one of those projects that got away on us. And in spite of a lot of good work that went into it, and so my comments are sort of less about where are we now and sort of how to get from here to there. And I've been involved in the Downtown East Side for 22 years. I was 10 years at the Carnegie Center, 12 years up at City Hall doing the drug policy work. And I'm really delighted to hear Scott and the VPD fully endorse good harm reduction approaches. I'm even more delighted that Stom Tamatakis is also endorsing good harm reduction approaches. Because as Dana said, this is part of the problem we have with some of these issues. The example of the shelter in Coquitlam is a good one. These dynamics play out across communities, and it's very difficult to move some of these issues forward. In the Downtown East Side, every single intervention, or in Vancouver, every single intervention to do with mental health and addictions, particularly if there's addictions involved, is like pulling teeth. It is so difficult to move forward. And consequently, each project becomes monumental in terms of organizing, in terms of staff time among different jurisdictions. And if you are successful, the odd chance where you're really successful in getting something in the ground, like a supportive housing unit or a supervised injection site or a detox center, the energy to mount that kind of intervention takes away from an overview, a more comprehensive thinking of the problem. So I've found that each of the interventions that I've been involved in from the city point of view has been a very intense experience, but it's always begged the question, what is the larger plan? So some of the issues that I've in my experience that I think, and I'm really delighted that E-Fry and the Frank Paul Society and BCCLA, kudos to all of you for doing this, because advocacy, this is not going to happen because a report was written, even a really good report. Vince Kane toured the province in 1993 when 200 people died of drug overdose deaths, wrote a really good report. It was published in 1994, and we are all very excited about it. Many people were involved. A very comprehensive report. Nothing happened for years. It was not really until 97, 98, 99 where things really started to, people were really coming together to try and figure things out. So just because there's a really good report out there doesn't mean anything's going to happen unless there's real champions at the political level. And that was one of the things, when I went from the Carnegie Center to City Hall, I felt that the addiction issues in the Downtown East Side are not going to change without strong political leadership, and put my mind to trying to figure out how that would come about. In this day and age, most overdose deaths from any substance are preventable. And there's good evidence around harm reduction. There's good evidence coming out of Insight. Arthur Manuel is a wonderful man who is going to show lots of evidence about the work they're doing in Toronto. There's evidence out of the alcohol maintenance program in Ottawa, the Shepherds of the Good Hope Society. This is published evidence in peer-reviewed journals that show this stuff works. It saves lives, it reduces costs to society, and it certainly frees up emergency wards and police. Some of the issues, we're in a situation now where we've had a problem. We failed in the 90s. I think that some of the people I worked with are in this room. We failed to make it happen, what Scott just described, for whatever reason, jurisdictional reasons. And that is something that rears its ugly head all of the time. The jurisdictional barriers to moving forward in a coherent, responsive way are immense. So, and they still exist. So that's something we have to address. Lack of leadership at various levels. The leadership right now is coming from here, from these organizations pulling us all together. And I know there are good people in government working on this issue, but unless there's a real champion internally that can raise this up the hierarchy of goals and objectives within all the levels of government, it's going to be a tough. And I think that was a problem when that project died in the late 90s. There was no real champion that took it on in any of our organizations that really drove the issue and became that sort of incessant sort of voice for this project. The other thing is that we spend so much time trying to achieve one. So we get a sobering center in Victoria, or we get a sobering center in Surrey. This is a public health issue. It's a provincial issue. I'm involved with a national drug policy organization now. So, I mean, these are issues across the country, and these kinds of interventions that are evidence-based, proven to work, need to be scaled up nationally. There are people dying across the country from drug overdoses, alcohol overdoses, all sorts of reasons that can be prevented. So the effort to implement one of these projects, and I think we saw this play out in the late 90s with this particular project, the long-term commitment to get the job done. So we have a wonderful report here, and we have some action and advocacy from various quarters. It's going to be a long slog to find the budgets, to find the facilities, to find the locations, to have community processes in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there needs to be a real, we have 2 leadership races. We have a city election coming next year. This is a really good time to insert this into the political process and get political commitments to this issue. This issue has been around. In 2000, the Vancouver Agreement talked about doing it. That was another example of jurisdictions coming together and unable to push it over the top. 2005, the City of Vancouver Housing Plan brought it into play and said this needed to happen in the downtown east side. It was not, again, high priority. It was not top of the list, and it consequently didn't happen. So there's no excuse for withholding these kinds of basic survival services, and that's when we get into these notions of harm reduction and abstinence-based treatment and all this sort of stuff. These are survival services. These services are meant to help people survive another day, so that they can fight the next day to try and get their life on the right track. They're basic services that we need within our communities. So we have to get beyond that sort of debate and just try and put these things in place. I think that's all I'm going to say. But those are some of the dynamics that they exist, maybe even more today because of the pressure on budgets. So the pressures on bureaucrats and politicians to make tough choices is going to make this particular advocacy effort, and I think that's what it is. It's got to be a strong advocacy effort. It's going to make it even more difficult than it was in the late 90s, when we actually had governments coming to the table with some semblance of commitment and some semblance of budgets. So I'm hopeful because of this type of meeting, but it's a long slog, and we really have to keep the feet to the fire. Thank you.